Estamos adentro. Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas tardes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special edition Talking with Ryron Gracie here on Open Mat Talks. And here we have our good friend, Sensei Rodrigo Salas. What's up, Sensei? How you doing?
Mi estimado Frank, how are you today? We're going to have a special edition. And we have a doble función, doble programa, dirían los de nuestros compañeros, colegas de la previa Prohibido Parpadear, doble cartelera, mi estimado Frank.
Okay, this one is going to be in English. Para los que están escuchando en español, this one is going to be in English. Va a ser en inglés. We're going live in English as soon as our guest comes in. He's already joining in, so he should be here in a minute. Okay, so before we go there, let's put the promo for you guys. Why not?
Yes. Ahora sí, Maestro Frank.
Yes, sir. In un momento más, in a minute, Master Ryron Gracie is going to be here with us. But I just want to say thank you, everybody that's here today, waiting for this good podcast. We already have people. There he is. Okay, here we have the man of the hour, Master Ryron Gracie. Hello, sir.
What's up, guys?
Master Ryron, how are you today? It's an honor to have you here.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
That's okay.
Don't worry. You told me that you are in the first class on after pandemic in the Gracie University is correct? A big, huge class?
The first class happened this week.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for accepting the invitation, sir. It's an honor to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you, Frank.
We're having a special edition just for you, sir. So whatever time you can give us, it's great. It's amazing. We know you are a busy man, and we just wanted to talk about this thing that is generating a revolution within Jiu-Jitsu, that are the 32 principles of Jiu-Jitsu. I was watching the video you guys uploaded on YouTube, and I believe it's truly, truly interesting. And I like what you said about student A and student P, right? The memory-oriented people and the principle-oriented people. And I think what you maestros are doing is just amazing, and people should take advantage of it. And we would like to hear more. Why did you do this? How did this happen?
Thank you. It's been very fun doing, and we can explain how it happened. It happened originally, we had thought of creating our purple to brown belt course for GracieUniversity.com, because we have a lot of content on this platform on GracieUniversity.com for people from white to blue, and blue belt stripe 1, stripe 2, stripe 3, and stripe 4. And then we said, okay, now we got to go into purple belt stripe 1, 2, 3, and 4 curriculum. So what does someone need to know on their way to brown belt? And what they need to know, obviously there are a few techniques here or there, but we realized that it was less about learning more techniques and more about people learning what it is that holds all the techniques together. And that is the principles of jiu-jitsu. So after, a few meetings, Hannah and myself just talking about it, and just as well as a couple other friends and just sharing ideas, we realized that, there are principles that everybody talks about when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Everybody talks about efficiency and control and timing. But these are very like kind of vague. Like, how do you become more efficient? It's not something that is, the path is not very clear on how to become more efficient. But at the same time, every day, me, my brother, many of our students, we are very, very efficient in how we grapple. And what it is that we're doing to display that level of efficiency, how are we behaving that is making us more efficient on the mat? And these are these micro principles that we have started to catalog and keep track of and have meetings and take notes of. And before you know it, we had 32 principles.
Master Hiron, why 32? Why not? Why 30? Why 32? Is that a number specific for that?
No, I don't think so. We knew it had to be. We wanted to have something that can break down into 4 groups. So 32 breaks down 8 times 4 is 32. It could have potentially been any other. Could have been 6 times 4. But I think as we were putting the principles down, we got to about 29, I think, kind of naturally. I think 28 or 29, and then we got 30, and then we got 2 more at the very end to make it 32.
Yeah, that's nice.
I have to apologize, sir, because every time we jump in, we usually ask the guests to give us a brief background, and we would love to hear. The thing is, when we have somebody of a member of the Gracie family, well, we see the Gracie family bigger than life type of deal, right? And I mean that in a very good way. And but if you can tell a little bit of how it was to be born and raised with one of the most important family of today in the martial arts world, and how you got up to this point, because as an outsider, we witnessed evolution, right? We saw the Gracie University coming up with the 36 technique program for the blue belt program. Before that, of course, UFC, Gracie Challenge, all the history you guys have. But then we have we've seen the master cycle, and now the 32 principles. And it's the new generation of maestros, yourself and Henner, your brother, doing all this. So can you tell us a little bit of your background, how you got up till today, sir, please?
So you want to know about before all of this structure and all these curriculums?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Rodrigo, you want to tell him everything? You want to tell him my whole story?
No, we have 20 years of knowing. Look, I have this.
That's what.
It's when you're a brown belt here in Hermosillo.
Yes.
It's like 15 years or 20 years ago. So I know about you, but the audience, maybe they don't know who is here in Gracie.
Exactly.
So
correct.
Just a little bit.
Yes, you for sure know a lot, and I'm still figuring out who I am every day. So when it comes to how I got here, I was very fortunate to be in this family and to grow up around my father, Ryron Gracie, and my uncle is Royce. Those were my main 2 influences as a child growing up, learning jiu-jitsu from them. And then also my grandfather very regularly would come to America and spend a month, 2 months, and just teaching us jiu-jitsu. So having Eddie Gracie as your grandfather and your master, it's very special experience. Of course, when I was a kid, when I was 12 or 13 years old, it might have been a little frustrating that my grandfather is always telling me what to do and getting me in positions and saying, hey, lay down, bottom of the side mount. But looking back, I'm very grateful for everything that he has, semi-forced me to do. And he forced it in a way of trying to prepare me. My grandfather, I felt he really wanted us, myself and my brothers, everybody who he taught. But just remembering my experiences, my grandfather always felt it was very important that we knew how to defend ourselves, how to survive and stay safe. So as young kids, we grew up in the family watching, my uncles and my father doing challenge matches and fighting karate representatives or other martial artists. And at the same time, we grew up playing soccer and going to school and being kids in the community. But we were very different. What we were exposed to in terms of combat and self-defense and martial arts was unlike anything any other child was experiencing, in the neighborhood or in the school district. So I'm very grateful for the amount of, I guess, preparation that was given to me in simply the form of combat. Now, besides combat, we were also, growing up in my family was very much about, taking care of your health. So I had a big head start compared to friends of mine that when they were 17, 18, 19, in terms of how I took care of my health. It's not because of me. It's because of the influences that were around me. And I respected my family so much. And I wanted the respect that other adults gave my father and my uncles and my grandfather. So then I chose to follow in their footprints in terms of a healthy lifestyle and being an honest person and being a respectful person, a caring person, and helping others. So, and then at a certain point, I kind of took it and I ran with it, and I just continue to be the best person that I can be for whoever I cross paths with, whoever I can help. I want to help them within reason. I'm here to help you guys. You asked for me to come hang out and talk to you guys. Of course, I want to hang out with Rodrigo. You know what I mean? And meeting you, Frank. You guys want to spread, you want to share jiu-jitsu and, I guess, expose people to different martial artists and specialists out there in the world. And if I can help, that's great. So I'm very grateful, the family that I grew up in. There was many things that were difficult, but in the end, they turned out great. There are many things that I probably won't do with my kids, but I'll do my own variation of them, which I would have never discovered that my own variation if I wasn't exposed to how I was raised in the Gracie family. So I'm forever grateful. And, and once I hit 18 years old, that's when I became one of the head instructor at the Gracie Academy in Torrance. 18, 19, my brother Henry and myself, we're pretty much responsible for teaching every single class. My uncle Hoyce had stepped down from teaching. My father was not teaching as much. Teaching at Gracie University, they had their own sibling, difficulties. So my father just looked at myself and Hannah and said, hey, you guys are going to get out there and go teach now. So it was interesting because when you're 17, 18, 19, you're teaching grown men and women, teaching adults or even children of adults. People sometimes can look at you and say, I don't know, if you qualify or not to teach. There's a little bit of a hesitation. And I naturally didn't believe in myself so much when I was 18, 19, 20. I was still learning this confidence that I have today to be able to teach 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. And so that conversation of how my confidence came about will tie into the principles. We'll come back to that. But speaking on me becoming the head instructor, I remember being on the mat, and I remember the class would end, and I would ask the students, hey, do you guys have any questions on today's techniques? And oftentimes I would ask that to the students, but then internally I was thinking to myself, please don't ask a question. Please don't ask any questions. I was afraid of the students that had been there for like 7, 9 years asking a question that I might not have the answer to. And that just shows how I might have been a brown belt at the time, and I'm 19 years old, but I lacked a lot of confidence. in my ability to problem solve. Of course, over time, that completely went away. And now I have to beg people for questions. And I love when I have a question in jiu-jitsu that I don't have an answer to, because that gives me the opportunity to go to work.
Nice. Nice.
Perfect, Hidden.
Un momento. Okay, so we have somebody here that wants to say hello as well.
Ryron, how are you?
What's up, brother? Good to see you.
Thank you very much for joining us in Open Mat Talks and all the experiences that you are sharing, especially as a teacher, as an instructor, which is every day very, very common to see bad teachers not teaching these 32 principles that you develop. And I have one question for you.
Hold on, I have one question. Did you just say bad teachers?
Yeah.
No, they're not bad teachers.
Yeah, remember, there are no bad students. Your father always said only bad teachers. And I think there are bad teachers.
Take it easy.
They know and they have the knowledge, but they don't have the skill to teach.
Hold on. So here's what it is. They really want to help the students. They're very good teachers. They very much care about the students. But you're right. They have not organized the principles. And even we ourselves, I could argue that I was a bad teacher because the principles were not organized 2 years ago, a year ago. So they are teachers that are constantly evolving to become better teachers. And one thing that you're saying is that if they incorporate the 32 principle language and they teach those lessons, they'll be even better teachers than they already are. And the pursuit of becoming a better teacher, that is something that anybody who is trusted by jiu-jitsu students and the community, that's almost a responsibility that you should always strive to become a better teacher. But I do hear you. But what's your question on the 32 principles? Tell me.
No, that first of all, congratulations. And also, this is not just 32 principles for jiu-jitsu itself. It's for life. So my question would be, from those 32 principles, which one do you use more into aspect of your own life and also for surviving during the pandemic in the academy from the business mindset?
Wow, good question. So it is true that principles that we use in jiu-jitsu are often talked about how they apply to everyday life. So the one that I would say that I use the most in life, I have the list of all the principles right here on my screensaver. So I have all the names. I don't have them memorized. I could select them from a list, but to memorize all of them is difficult. So put it this way, the principle that means so much to me is the prevention principle. Okay, is one that has been very instrumental in my jiu-jitsu in the last 2 years. And it's the idea of putting your opponent's concerns and putting whatever they want to do, concern yourself more with what they're trying to do to you than with what you want to do to them. So when I think about prevention, we talk about stopping progress. If I fight someone, that person is fighting me. They're trying to hurt me. Progress for them is to hurt me. So I need to stop them from hurting me. So preventing progress could be the principle, the prevention principle. Preventing the progress of, let's just say, evil or pain. So in terms of this pandemic, okay, the pandemic, there's lots of stuff talked about in the media that I believe was very toxic. And in terms of politics and all of the COVID, they really try to push COVID on you. And I was feeling a little sense of like, man, it's just too much trash on the media. Everything nonstop is trash. It wasn't enough positivity. So then I noticed how all this, I felt like I needed to stop this from kind of entering my system. So I prevented it from entering my system completely by removing myself from
Nice.
Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I think it was January 5th or something, until like 15 days ago. Once we released the principles, I came back on to start talking about the principles again, because the principles is a positive thing and I'm feeling good about it. So being aware of how the media can have so many, toxic and negative influences. So I prevented it from basically infiltrating my life in every area, because when you turn on your phone, it's very easy. There's so many different, platforms where the negativity can come to you from. So I was fully in prevent the toxic world from affecting me. So I closed myself off to social media. That's the most recent application. And then acceptance is another principle, the principle of acceptance, accepting the inevitability of a battle, of a situation. So we had to accept that we had to close our jiu-jitsu school for 15 months. Now, we didn't know how long it would close for, but we knew once the government said you have to lock down, it was inevitable that we were going to close. So being able to accept that and not be suffering for too long, for 3 weeks, 5 weeks, complaining about how we're closed. Once we knew we weren't going to open after 2 months, we started teaching online Zoom classes. And we've taught live, I would say 700 Zoom classes, maybe more, in a 12 or 11 month period. And that's because we quickly accepted that it was inevitable, that the government, that the state was going to take control and close our business. And thanks to that, we were able to get hundreds of new students that would have never been students of ours. And now they're logging in from, Hong Kong and Puerto Rico and North Carolina and Guatemala and everywhere around the country and the world to learn live via Zoom, because we accepted and we improvised with the tough times, and we did something new, which was teaching Zoom classes. Now, many other schools did this as well. And matter of fact, we weren't even the first ones to do it. But the simple fact that we did it and we stuck to it and we had a curriculum, it really helped us out a lot during these tough times.
Great.
Frank, saludos.
Yeah, we have people saying hello. If we can, okay. Daniel Macedo, I feel such a great privilege to hear the 32 principles directly from Ryron. Best regards, masters. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, guys. We can discuss it more for sure.
Daniel says, Ryron, congratulations to be in the podcast of these two heroes. I don't know about that engage the responsibility to build a better world. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But thank you.
The pressure's on, Frank. The pressure's on, bro. You guys are Avengers now.
DJ Temple, hello, Master Ryron.
What's up, everybody? Hello. Thanks for listening.
Kakoy 12 Pares Girl, hello, Master Frank, Sensei Rodrigo, and Mr. Gracie. Looking forward to this.
Thank you.
DJ Temple says, thank you for everything. Massive fan and student. Excited to grab the 32 principles.
Amazing. So let's talk about these principles,
Yeah.
right? How do you feel, Jose? Guillermo, you feel good on my answer?
No, a great answer. I like that these 32 principles, it might have more worth in the daily life basis than even in the jiu-jitsu, because I've been following them when I grab them, when I figure out which 32 principles should include. It's a lifetime. It's a part of a mindset that everybody should use in any crisis. especially economic crisis or business crisis, personal crisis, because like you said, and I follow you, it will prevent them to suffer or how to handle other difficult situation, because your father in the mindset, by the way, talks about these 32 principles, not mention them, but all what he's sharing through his life when back in 1973, 74, he applied the same principles, accepting and following all the way through this present moment. So thank you very much for sharing. And I wanted the audience to feel what Jiu-Jitsu can help them besides this part.
Yes, I agree. And sometimes it's easier for someone to learn a principle and apply it in a position with some friends on the mat. And then once they kind of understand it and they can, explore the principle for 3 months, 2 months, 6 months, then it might feel easier to then apply it to real life. So jiu-jitsu is it's one step, right? It's the first, maybe it's one step before taking the principles, like you mentioned, into everyday life challenges. Thank you for that.
I got a question. Sir, what makes a principle a principle?
So you mean like how did we come to decide which principles will be principles?
Yes, sir.
So I guess a principle is a strategy. It's a truth. A principle is for example, efficiency. Looking to be efficient in as many situations as possible can be very helpful, considering what the goal is. And in combat, the goal is to fight and to survive. And if you exhaust yourself, my grandfather always said how exhausting yourself is worse than getting armbarred or choked. So efficiency is what we call the apex principle when it comes to combat and fighting. Now, what are some small truths or strategies or, approaches that can help us reach this goal of being efficient or of having control or applying good leverage or displaying or applying good timing? So these micro principles, and for example, the principle of acceptance, which we talked about, which is accepting the inevitability of a situation. So why is acceptance a principle? Well, it's a principle because we wrote it down as a principle. But now, how does accepting a situation help us in the big picture? So, for example, let's say we're grappling, you and I, and I'm going for a attack against you, Frank. I'm attacking and going for something. There's a certain point in my attack where it's to my benefit to acknowledge and accept that what I'm doing is not gonna work. I can accept it because I'm experienced enough to acknowledge your proper defense. So what you're doing, how you're defending yourself is solid. And me accepting that allows me to then conserve energy and go on to the next attack or the next position.
Beautiful.
So, and this is very difficult because when we're fighting for something, for example, to keep control of somebody, or we're fighting to break past someone's defense. Once you start fighting, you become very committed to that which you have set out to do, whether it's to keep control or to get past someone's defense. So that commitment can be a little bit dangerous, because maybe you're so committed that you continue to commit beyond a point which is intelligent, beyond a point which makes sense. So again, maybe it's time to let go of that which you believe has this tremendous value, but maybe it's not. Maybe letting go of it will help you advance further than if you continue to hang on to this thing. So the acceptance principle, and how did we come to this conclusion? Because the amount of times we have been in tricky and sticky situations,
Right.
and our desire to continue to fight for something ended up resulting in us getting swept, getting armbarred, getting triangled, whatever it may be. So we learned at a very young age that sometimes we need to accept that which we're fighting for is no longer available to us, or that's no longer the fight. So after you have, 15, 20, 30, 40 of these, I would say, negative experiences, or, oops, can you guys still see me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, after you have enough of these experiences where, your lack of acceptance harms you in the jiu-jitsu way, it harms you, then you say, man, okay, let's pay attention right now. Here I am, 20 times in a row, 30 times in a row. And for some people, it could be 5 or 6 times. You can learn the lesson about how learning to accept the inevitable can be a great tool for you. So there it is. That's one principle. And then check. You write it down. And now you start finding out how the acceptance principle can serve you both when you're attacking or when you're defending, when you're controlling or when you're escaping. It serves you in both the offensive and defensive positions. And almost every single principle can be applied from almost every single position, which just shows how the principle has so many uses. We talk about the uses for the principles are endless. And as Guillermo talked about, in everyday life, the principle can help you shoot on your drive home this afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
About the principles, can you talk about another principle that the jiu-jitsu competition guys can apply in their games? Because my brother says, for principle for lifestyle, principle for self-defense,
yeah.
But the students, the competition guys, the MMA guys, they can use the 32 principles. Can you explain some of them, please?
Yeah. For example, like the distance principle, many MMA, it's very clear how the distance principle, controlling the distance between you and your opponent, and also playing with the space between the technique, meaning a technique normally needs this much space, but when you give it much less space, you are now applying the distance principle. You're interrupting the space. So, but that's kind of obvious because that's distance management in terms of like punch protection. But like, for example, the clock principle, the idea of playing with time, meaning controlling time and playing with time. How do you do that? And when I think of people who compete, competitors, from my experience, I have trained with many jiu-jitsu athletes and MMA athletes, throughout the years. And one of the most common things that I attempt to share with them is what I notice is that, for example, it's very common that athletes are constantly on the go. They're on the go. They're always moving. And they're very much thinking about what they want to do to me. Now, in a couple training sessions, I have been able to articulate how, because a lot of times these other athletes, especially ones that are more MMA focused, not so much the jiu-jitsu black belts, but when they're heavy MMA athletes, what they want to be able to do is to avoid my submissions. They want to survive. They don't want to get triangled by me or arm barred by me. So to help them defend against my arm bars and my chokes or my triangles, I teach them, I show them the steps at which I'm taking. I'm going to take these 5 steps to do my attack. And these steps take, let's just say, 3.5 seconds. So now, if I can teach this athlete how to slow down my movement so that I can't do it in 3.5 seconds. So instead, it takes me 7 seconds to do the movement. They are now essentially controlling time. They're controlling my time. You see that? Because my move takes 3.5 seconds. But when they interrupt it and they make it take 7.5 seconds, now the whole move is falling apart. And I can't tell you, like, I have probably 100 experiences with people who, for many months, I've caught them in the same move, and I have my timing down. Boom, 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 boom. I've taught them, hundreds of students and fellow instructors and black belts and athletes and friends. But because of their understanding of this simple principle of slowing down my movement and controlling the clock, controlling my time, these people have become the most annoying and difficult training partners in the world to me. And sometimes they're blue belts. I have some blue belts that use the clock principle so well and control me that in some cases I have walked off the mat. Let's say it goes to a draw. We spar for 5 minutes on a timer and it ends in a draw. And it's because of the clock principle and a couple others, I'm sure. But that's the one that I was focusing on, that I noticed in that moment and we're discussing right now.
Perfect.
So one thing about these principles, you guys, is, what comes to mind for me is that students, when people train jiu-jitsu at a school, let's say you have 20 people on the mat grappling, what is the agreed upon energy when sparring happens? What is people shake hands and one person says, hey, I'm going to tap you in their minds. I need to beat you and you're going to try to beat me. So I'm going to avoid defeat and I want to submit you. That's like the agreed upon, I guess, the intention of the sparring. And that is very important. And there is a place for that, no doubt. Sometimes I shake someone's hand. I try to tap them as fast as I can. Now, jiu-jitsu students around the world, as well as jiu-jitsu instructors, everybody gets very excited when somebody catches a submission. It's very much like it's pumped and we praise it. We say, wow, how amazing. It was a great choke. Now, other things that we praise are sweeps or a nice guard pass might also be, but not so much, right? On the scale, the submission is number one. Right. And then maybe a sweep or an escape from the mount or the bottom of side mount is number 2. And then maybe we could say the third tier would be good control. And then the fourth tier might be maybe good defense. But 95%, if you guys would, I don't know if you guys agree or not, is around the tapping somebody out. That's the big focus.
Yes.
And when we think of talking about these 32 principles, okay, here's what I suggest. Obviously, somebody has to first watch the videos and invest in the course and be exposed to these principles. But once you're exposed to the principles, a simple principle like the creation principle, right? The ability to create to do specific actions to create specific reactions. Once you dive into that principle, for example, and you learn it, I would almost suggest that imagine a student that's a purple belt or a blue belt and says, you know what? For the next 2 weeks, I am not going to go for any submissions. Matter of fact, all I'm going to do is specific actions in an attempt to create the overreaction, let's say, of somebody ripping an arm away or posturing their head away. I want to create the reaction of somebody running away. That's it. What kind of behaviors can I do to get someone to run and to retreat from me? If someone can study that, right, for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, think about that's as valuable, in my opinion, that's as valuable as somebody studying foot locks or wrist locks for a month. And it might even be more valuable. It could probably be more valuable because submissions have been taught to all of us. We're all being taught submissions all the time. And you don't have to catch a submission to practice the submission. Even you seeing the submission, even the submission opportunity being very clear to you is a little bit of a victory for that submission. So when you become, let's just say you become a specialist at making people run from you and retreat, because most people, they want to come at you and they want to engage. But if you can have 15, 20 different ways to create someone to run from you, now you have that at your disposal. And then who knows, maybe one day when you need some space, you're a little bit trapped under somebody, you use this. And then what do? They retreat and they take their pressure off of you. And then it helps your escape. But that's the creation principle that was studied for however long you can study it for.
We have one question from somebody watching.
Ask away.
Roy Hensley asks, Ryron, sir, how does the 32 principles mix with your approach to your keep it playful mindset, please?
So there it is. Great question. So if you remember, keep it playful comes from an energy of being a scientist and exploring and flowing and being free and studying. So anybody who's very rigid and wants to be the best in the room and doesn't want to get mounted by anybody ever and is always trying to land in the dominant positions, that person is a little bit, they believe that they're keeping it real and that they're representing. But in fact, what they're doing is because they're so concerned with being the best and looking really good, and what they're doing is they're trapping themselves. Now, what I'm suggesting is that you free yourself. And you free yourself by taking a little bit more of a playful approach to your jiu-jitsu practice. Don't be so concerned with being on the bottom of the fight, of the grapple, of the jiu-jitsu play. Being on the bottom is not a problem. Your beliefs about being on the bottom are what might be a problem. But the actual position is not a problem. Now, when you say it's bad down here, I'm losing points, or I might get choked, then you start to overreact to escape. So keep it playful tells us that it's okay for me, for example, if I'm going to train with somebody who is top level athlete. Imagine like Fabricio Verdun, amazing athlete, amazing fighter, champion. If I'm going to train with him, okay, there's absolutely no problem why I can't be underneath him in our grappling session. Now, in a real fight, I would want to avoid him mounting on me. But in practice, I want him to mount on me. I want to learn. I want to understand the position of the bottom. So it's to my advantage. So that's a very playful, very free approach. Now, when I allow this to happen, or when it happens organically, because he's a top level athlete, it can happen organically. But in many cases, even before it happens organically, I just put myself on the bottom. Now, when I go there, now it's time for me to practice applying only 32 principles. Now I can get the 32 principles and apply them from the bottom. I can begin to explore them from the bottom of the fight. So the person who is afraid of exploring and trying new things and being somewhat of a scientist in terms of the principle learning and application, I would say is not keeping it playful.
Right. One of the at the beginning, I asked you to talk a little bit about your background, because then what I was trying to get at is the fact that you are, I know it's going to sound a little bit, I don't care. You are the perfect guys to do this. That's why I asked about the Blue Belt program, the Master Cycle, and now the principles, because you guys are creating all this because of all the experience that you have. And you mentioned in the video that this is what the masters do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I guess we're the perfect guys to do this simply because we did it, number one.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Exactly.
So thank you for acknowledging that. But yes, it is true that we have, like I said, we've been very fortunate to learn from so many great instructors, and we were given permission at a very young age. We were given permission by our grandfather, by our father, and my uncle. But we weren't given permission directly. We were indirectly given permission to improvise and to create and to problem solve and to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and put it together. Now, and how are we given permission to do that? It's because I watched with my own eyes, my own family do that. Now, when I was 11 years old or 12, I wasn't present enough to pick up on what was happening. But because of my father's understanding of jiu-jitsu, or my uncle's, it was so great. Their understanding of the principles of jiu-jitsu and how jiu-jitsu works, they saw it in such a simple way that when they were confronted with a situation, they would just go like this, take, and do. And so many jiu-jitsu practitioners are beginning to do this, especially the more experienced ones. But it's not uncommon for someone who's very new to feel like they can't do that, because then they're changing the technique from how it was taught to them. And that can be seen as very disrespectful. If I show you an armbar and then 20 minutes later, 10 minutes later, you say, hey, I'm doing it different. This is how I'm doing it now. I can look at that and say, oh, well, what? The way that I showed it wasn't good enough? And I feel offended. But instead of curious about how, wow, you changed it. Why did you change it? And you say, I changed it because, I have really thick legs, or, I have a hurt knee, whatever the reason is. And then now, I understand why you changed it. Now, the fact that you changed it, what you created might not even be that effective. But what matters is that it's working for you. And you, as my student, I'm not offended with you making a change, because I believe in myself, and I know that I can constantly teaching everything that I know, from mindsets to principles to techniques. So I want to give all that. So if from everything that I gave, you found it within yourself to change something, it's okay. I'm glad I was able to help you to have the confidence in yourself and the feeling of safety within yourself to make a modification, because that's all it is. Jiu-Jitsu is a whole bunch of modifications, hundreds, thousands of modifications.
Hiro, that's amazing. The 32 principles can apply in a bulletproof program and at a woman empowered. I mean, you are created, for kids, for women, and for everybody. But it's gonna be a 32 key principles, 32 principles for women, or these two principles can apply it in the whole program of the Gracie curricula.
Yeah, I think all of the Gracie University courses, Women Empowered, Gracie Survival Tactics for Law Enforcement and Military, all these different courses are all jiu-jitsu, right? The course simply exists because a child doesn't need the same techniques as a woman, for the Women Empowered course, right? A 7-year-old kid that's being bullied at school, it's a little bit different in terms of what they need to learn first. But all of it comes from jiu-jitsu, the art of jiu-jitsu. And yes, these 32 principles, they cover all of the courses and the whole art. 100%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful.
So yeah, how do you guys, have you guys watched a little bit of the 32 principles?
Yes, sir.
And how do you guys feel in terms of, your own exploration of them and encouraging students to explore principles and to kind of let go a little bit of this concern of always winning and not getting submitted, but being a little more of a scientist, because that's what it all boils down to, right? And a lot of this studying and becoming a scientist happens in sparring, but you guys are all instructors, right? Am I correct? Everyone's teaching to some degree, teaching martial arts and jiu-jitsu. So when your student is sparring, is it okay for the student to a little bit not be so concerned with the outcome of the sparring and be more focused on studying these principles or principles, period?
For me, what I have experienced watching is that they give them answers to create even a technique. They can combine principles and maybe not knowing a step or not knowing a response or an answer or a counter technique. But if they can combine principle of acceptance and then creative or flow, they will figure out how to accomplish a survival or survive, conserve the energy. So for me, the principles give you a lot of strategy. It helps to put your technique to the next level of confidence.
Great. So you're saying that you encourage
Yes.
the study of principles.
Of course, even as a goal to be able to figure out which principle you are using it in
Yes.
that spar, in that situation. You can always find out if you're even applying a principle, because I remember your grandfather told me once during a class that you can have the perfect technique, but if you don't have either the timing or you are not executing the technique, it comes from a principle, not because of the technique itself. So for me, it's helping me to help the students how to resolve the problem that they are encountering when nobody's there for them.
Yeah, you want the students to become their own problem solvers
Yeah.
in a way. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I love
Yes.
it.
Okay, Master Hiron, do you want to say first, Frank? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say I'm more a striker than a grappler, right? But I was watching your video when you talk about pivot, structure, and overload, those three principles that you share there. And I got to say, I learned more about jiu-jitsu with those three principles that I have learned. I mean, even though I'm a striker, I like jiu-jitsu and I incorporate some of it, of course, you have to. Uh, and I learned more just from watching that pit because it made me understand, right, what you guys do. Because what you guys do, it's amazing. It really is. It's an art and it's amazing. And the efficiency, like you said, it's wow. It's amazing to watch. But to be able to understand it from that principles perspective, the pivoting and the examples, right, and the framing and the overload, I got to tell you, I'm using those principles from now on. It's standing up and on the ground or whatever. It's going to be easier for me to explore from that platform just like that. And it took me, I don't know, 15 minutes of your explanation to get it. So thank
That's
you.
so great to hear. Yeah, this is back to what Jose said, is that it applies to everything. So, and I'm sure it even applies to the striking arts.
Oh, yeah.
But the fact that you're understanding jiu-jitsu more now, what jiu-jitsu is, that's beautiful. I'm glad that did that for you. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. And for me, Hiron, I know it's going to run out of time for an hour. If you chose
15 more minutes. 15, 20 more minutes.
Can you explain, because I guess the principles are, like you say in your video with Henry, is two kind of people, the naturals and the others. And I guess we are the others. And the principles give us the understanding, like my brother says, what's happening here. Even if we don't have an instructor, but we know the principles and know what principles are happening in the moment. So if you can explain who is the naturals and who is the other, please.
Yeah, so I guess what we explained was that there are some people that when they learn jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu can be very complex. There are many steps sometimes to a technique. And for someone who has not learned, a martial art or something that involves that many steps, it can be new to watch someone show, 13 steps to a technique, and you see it 3 or 4 times, and then you remember. It can be a little overwhelming to remember that. But some people, they see what is taught, and they see beyond the 12, 15 steps. They see it through a simpler lens. And this is the lens of the principles. And this is what Frank talked about, which was pivot, frame, overload. These are the 3 principles. So when someone who is, very intelligent and trying to memorize every step, sometimes they're so consumed with all the things that are being said that they're not seeing how simple the move actually is. And it's not uncommon for people when they're watching jiu-jitsu for them to say, wow, that's so simple. And when you say that's so simple, I would imagine that they're saying it's simple because they're seeing how the move is not necessarily, the 17 steps that were talked about, but the move is actually a few very basic movements combined with a few principles. And so the point was that there are students out there that they just naturally pick up on how simple jiu-jitsu really is. Now, I am not one of those people. I'm not a natural, I think, from birth. If I was born in another family and at 24 years old started learning jiu-jitsu, I don't believe that I'm a natural. So the 32 principles, when you study the 32 principles, if I was to study the 32 principles and allow myself to practice from all positions and really be a scientist and forget about tapping people out and focus on breaking down these principles and really understanding them and making deposits and investing in these principles, that's the whole point. I can become a natural. I can become someone that when presented with a situation that is somewhat sticky or dangerous or new, I can say, hold on, here's where I am, and I can open my library, my book of principles, and I can, that's all happening inside here, right? Henner talked about you run this 32 principle diagnostics. And this, it's imagine that you're in a situation and then you say, okay, I'm trapped. I need some help. Or I don't know what to do. I need some help. And then you look at everything that you've been studying for the past 2, 3, 4 years. 32 principles could take 4 years. Easy if you invest. And 4 years is nothing for somebody who wants to be around jiu-jitsu for a lifetime. So now you have someone who, and I say 4 years, that's if you high level, right, understanding of the principles. If you do each principle, for a month, there you are. You know what I mean? It's a little bit less, 32 months, or less than 3 years. So, but becoming somewhat of a natural and a problem solver, and like you said, you get to look at jiu-jitsu almost like you are a master. And I would love it. I would love for all of my students right now in our building to look at a situation, and before they ask me, hey, Hiron, what would you do here? They ask themselves, hey, what would I do here? Okay, I have studied 10 principles, let's just say, or I've studied the first 8, part 1. And from part 1, I can use the acceptance principle. I can use the pyramid principle. And then they start to use the principles for themselves and they solve the problem. And then maybe they never come to me, or maybe they come to me and they say, Hiron, I was going to ask you for help, but then I asked myself, and this is what I came up with. Now, do you have any other suggestions? And then we just share it. It's nonstop teamwork.
Nice.
Amazing. Wow.
Okay.
Hiron, I remember when you trained with your grandfather and you used to say that spending time with him, maybe like training for 6 months, is equally to training for 3 years or whatever, because of these details. From these 32 principles, of course, the story of your grandfather being a weak, fragile, which one, from your perspective, do you think he will love more because of his style to apply?
Well, I mean, I would have to say that every single one of these principles, I have felt my grandfather apply on me. So everything that I know, all the jiu-jitsu that I know, and when I say jiu-jitsu, I mean the principle. These things were passed down to me from my grandfather and my father and beyond. Now, some of the principles might have been used more than others, but I cannot look at the list of principles and think of one that I did not personally experience my father or my grandfather. These guys, masters, applying to me personally. Now, and that just shows you that the principles are so, all of these principles are in the pursuit of better control, better timing, more efficiency. That's what they're in the pursuit of. And efficiency, these are things that my grandfather and my father were always trying to teach us. So to teach us efficiency or good control or good timing and so on, they taught us on the mat while grappling. And because of my level of observation, especially, once I was over 18, 19 years old, my level of observation was becoming so advanced that it was very unlike. I noticed everything. I had been trained to notice what is being done to me. And not only to notice it, but to notice it and then the next day or the next hour, go and try to use it myself. And this is what, you don't have to be born in the Gracie family to do this. Anybody can notice what is happening to them and then say, you know what, I'm going to try that. And I'm going to try it from all positions. And then, oh, you know what, I figured out. Bottom of the mount is not a safe place to try that one. We can all do this. The thing is that it's difficult because when you come to jiu-jitsu, when you start learning, from the beginning, you ask the instructor, hey, give me some information. And they give it. And then you appreciate it. And then you want more. And then you want more. And you take more. And what we're saying is stop taking from the instructor maybe 10% of the time. And turn to yourself and say, hey, what can I do right now in this situation? And be okay with knowing that with what you figure out might not be the best answer, but it's okay. It's your first time. Eventually, you ask yourself enough times and you will be as effective at problem solving as your instructor. I feel as effective at problem solving as any one of my instructors before me. I feel as effective, if not more effective than them. But why is that? It's because of them. They gave me so much. I took it and then I just kept going. And this is growth. This is how you grow.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, guys.
Last thing. Hello, Frank.
Tell me.
Just, los últimos saludos, Frank. ¿O ya no hay? Yo sé.
Yeah, we have people saying hello. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is there any more questions?
Let me see if we got questions.
You have
Okay.
one question, or you guys have another 8 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm feeling good.
Okay,
Let's see. We do have a question. We do have a question here. Kakoi 12 Pares girl, Master Hiron, can you talk more about the agreed upon energy concept? How do you achieve that? Is it fair to say that it can change on a dime?
So the agreed upon energy, what I hear from that is it the agreed upon energy of two training partners, of how they interact?
I guess.
In terms of training, I don't remember that agreed upon energy concept term. So if you can clarify that question even more. But one thing that when I think of agreed upon energy, I think if I'm going to train with, Rodrigo, we're going to roll, him and I, that there can be an agreed upon energy between us and how we practice jiu-jitsu, how we roll. And finding an agreed upon energy, especially if that energy is, a notch down or a few notches down from war. That is actually a good idea in terms of our exploration. It will very much help our exploration of jiu-jitsu and principles included.
Great. Anything you want to add, sir, before we wrap it up?
Yo, I feel it was good seeing you guys. I haven't seen these brothers in a long time, just on a little social media here or there. But I hope to visit Mexico one day,
For sure.
I haven't traveled in a long time. I traveled like a couple places here or there, but to teach police courses, GST, but haven't left the country in a year plus. So who knows what's happening, but maybe you guys will be in LA one day soon. Frank, yourself, you guys are always welcome here in Torrance to come visit us, as well as anybody who's listening. You can always come visit Gracie University. We're here for you guys. We're here to answer your questions. I'd love to share the mat with anybody. So thank you so much for the time, you guys.
Thank you very much, Ryron. Congratulations of this new phase of the growing of Jiu-Jitsu, especially the 32 principles. And hope to see you soon, man. Chokes.
Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thank you. It's an honor. I'm going to say the invitation to Henner to explain a little bit more about this, you know, your brother, the whole concept, if he wants to share with us. But for now, thank you very much. And I don't know if this year, but the next year, my brother and I will want to meet the new Gracie University, because we know Carson, we know Artesia,
yes,
but we don't know the Gracie University, and it's on our homework. Thank you very much.
Yes, the new building. It's beautiful. You guys are going to love it. Bring Frank too, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ok, excelente, excellent, Guillermo. Muchas gracias.
No,
But
maestro
everybody-
Frank. Gracias
for everybody-
por...
Perdón, adelante. No, adelante, Guillermo, adelante.
No, pues quería agradecerte, obviamente, saludar a todos los que nos acompañaron, obviamente. Sé que ustedes despiden el programa, como siempre, este espacio, y por estas grandes respuestas. Qué interesante ver cómo las artes marciales aplican a la vida cotidiana y estos principios que no son únicos, o sea, todas las artes marciales tienen un principio que se puede aplicar a nuestra vida cotidiana y a desarrollar nuestra conciencia, a desarrollar nuestro ser para ser un mejor arte marcialista. Así que muchísimas gracias a ambos, felicidades, les mando un fuerte abrazo y bueno, me despido yo.
Perdón, Guillermo, antes de que te despidas, ¿cuándo explorando la conciencia marcial el siguiente episodio?
El otro, sí,
otro?
es el próximo domingo, no mañana, sino nos toca el próximo domingo y como siempre, pues invitarlos y agradecerles el apoyo, Frank y Rodrigo.
Gracias.
Gracias, Guillermo. Bye.
Bye.
Pues ahí estamos. Déjame hacer los comentarios rápidamente. Macana, a Cuba, aloha nuevamente. Saludos también a los maestros Rodrigo Salas y al maestro Guillermo Salas. Gracias. Dice, este es un excelente sábado. Mahalo, Master Soto, por excelente programa. Mahalo, Master Ryron Gracie, por compartir sus conocimientos en este programa. Gracias. Selene Ávila, hi, I got back. I'm learning a lot, something that is very new for me, and I'm liking it. Thank you. Gracias. Saludos. Okay, let's see. Kakoy, 12 Paris girl couldn't agree more, sir, about the negativity of social media. Good for you, literally, for tuning out. Gracias. Ya contestamos. Rafael Herrera, un gran saludo, grandes maestros desde España, Andalucía. Gracias. Jeff Dukes, salute, sir. Thank you for commenting. Fabian Cepeda, the 32 principles reveal the foundation of a philosophical path. It's not about fights, it's about evolve. We learned that with your father. Thanks for the contribution. Regards from Mexico, Ryron. Gracias. Disculpen que no pudimos pasar todas las preguntas, pero estaba con tiempo contado. Roy Hensley, thank you, sir, for your answer. You are my inspiration for my youth and a true free spirit. Saludos. Sam Lee, invitado gigante, ojalá se repita en español, ojalá, saludos. Hello, señor Salvador Becerra. Hello, Mr. Frank Soto, your social media guest, Rodrigo Salas, Guillermo Salas. Hello, Mr. Ryron Gracie, Henry Gracie from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy, Torrance, California. Gracias, saludos. Selene Ávila, I would like to practice, learn, but maybe I will pass away. I need much effort, energy, control, mind, my own time. Adelante, come on, you can do it. Kevin Fredrickson, great interview. I always enjoy your insights and the which you get your guests to open up. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Selene Avila, maybe I'm going to need 10 years to get one movement. Maybe you need 10 hours. Come on, you need to give it a try. Yes, Cristina Perez Manriquez, or 10 minutes. Mr. Koloski, impressive insights from an impressive master. Saludos, brother. Take care, my friend. Yes, the agreed upon energy on the training mat that you mentioned earlier, very interesting. Gracias, thank you. Enrique Ramírez Nenninger, excelente sesión, saludos.
Señor.
Claudio Marcelo, excelente. Master Frank Soto, Kinetic Dragon, gracias. Selene Ávila dice, jajaja, ok. 10 minutos, 10 minutes, that's it. Mi estimado, listo.
Doble sesión. Tuvimos ahora sí un programa que creo que va a ser de decisiones especiales, arriba y abajo, 2 leyendas, 2 maestros. Y pues bueno, yo tengo nomás antes que despedirnos, maestro Frank, porque no tuvimos postcrédito, pues a lo mejor la primera vez ya tuviste oportunidad de conocer al máster Gracie, con el que empezamos 20 años, uno de nuestros maestros, que aquí tenemos obviamente parte de mi reconocimiento estar con ellos. Un punto de vista, creo que aprendiste los principios, los estaremos aplicando. Ya sé que nos vacunamos también, maestro Fran, poquito a poco, paso a paso, vamos a ir retomando, porque creo que la gente va a querer tenernos en el mat de nuevo. ¿Te parece bien?
Así es, y a seguirse cuidando, que todavía no acaba, pero ya vamos mejorando, vamos mejor. Sí, todavía ando dolorido del brazo. Thank you, everybody. Muchas gracias, Sensei. Excelente. Estrellita para ti.
Nos vemos el próximo sábado.
Próximo sábado nos vemos. Cuídense mucho. Gracias. Hasta luego.